All right, good afternoon. My name is Akiva Leibowitz. I'm a physician, a critical care physician at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and I am a resident of Brookline, part of the Brookline Peace Coalition, which is a group of concerned citizens of all walks of life, ethnicities, nationalities, religions, who work on communal and municipal, at the communal and municipal level on these issues which are at stake. So I'd like to thank the members of Brookline Peace Coalition for putting this talk together and really, making this happen. So I'll greet again with Ramadan Kareem and joyous Easter to those who are celebrating. And as we gather here today, people of many faiths and nationalities in the Palestinian Cultural Center, which is presiding in a mosque, which is located in a building which used to be a church. In better times, this could have been the backdrop for a rabbi, priest, imam walk into a bar joke. But not today. We gather here for also tragic reasons, with a heart full of devastation, sorrow, grief, and worries of what has happened and of what is yet to come. Given the unique blends of traditions gathered here today, and this unique timing, I cannot resist the urge to reuse an analogy I have used not a long time ago when introducing some of the speakers here today. In the book of Genesis and in its Quran parallel in Surah 37, the writer presents the story of Abraham and the ultimate sacrifice. In this story, which is commemorated both on Rosh Hashanah and on Eid al-Adha, which lays several weeks ahead of us, Abraham is commanded to God to sacrifice his son, and he, as a devout worshiper, obeys the word of God. When the moment of truth arrives, the human sacrifice is substituted by a ram. This dramatic moment is preceded by the messenger calling out to Abraham, "Do not raise your hand against the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God." Commentators, theologians, thinkers along the ages in all different religions have focused their interpretations of this story on the nature of Abraham's commitment to God. I would like to offer an alternative focal point, one that surrounds the calling of the messenger, "Do not raise your hand against the boy." First and foremost, do not raise your hand against the boy. All else is secondary and might be possible only, and if only, you do not raise your hand against the boy. Perhaps the core of the message is that those who fear whether God, conscience, their values, humanism, or their morality cannot do so without first avoiding and preventing the metaphorical hand-raising against the child. This parable, the parallel to this parable in modern medicine, depicted in the Hippocratic Oath, would be primum non nocere. First, no harm, all else will follow. We gather here today as the shriek, "Do not raise your hand against the boy," has been violated and desecrated more than one can bear. We will be hearing and discussing if and how healthcare can be provided while we are unfortunately so far away from the basic tenet of do no harm. So much suffering, loss, death, and trauma has been inflicted on Israelis and Palestinians over the past months. The horrific October 7th massacre and the capture of innocent hostages, followed by intense bombardment, immense bloodshed, loss of lives, and mere devastation affecting the people of Gaza every single day since throughout the 5 months that followed, are heartbreaking. Not one person in this room can uphold that this carnage can be justified in any way or manner. As we speak, thousands of innocent civilians are starving, not because of some natural disaster, drought, or famine, but rather a man-made situation, which can and should be stopped. The fate of 130 hostages remains unknown, with imminent dangers to their lives. Gazan children, women, men, young and old, are being denied their fundamental right to health care, while this is readily available just a stone throw away. A recent study published by the Johns Hopkins University and the London School of Hygiene projects tens of thousands of additional deaths in the Gaza Strip in the upcoming months if nothing is done to cease the fire and apply massive humanitarian interventions. Our guests today and what they do make me think of Mahmoud Darwish's famous poem, "Think of Others." As you prepare for your breakfast, think of others. Do not forget the pigeon's food. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Do not forget those who seek peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others, those who are nursed by clouds. As you return home to your home, think of others. Do not forget the people of the camps. As you sleep and count the stars, think of others, those who have nowhere to sleep. As you liberate yourself in metaphor, think of others, those who have lost the right to speak. As you think of others far away, think of yourself. Say, if only I were a candle in the dark. Physicians for Human Rights Israel stands at the forefront of the struggle for human rights, the right to health in particular, in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. Founded in 1988 by a group of Israeli physicians led by Dr. Ruchama Martin, PHRI works to promote a just society where the right to health is granted equally to all people under Israel's responsibility. PHRI employs a multifaceted approach to achieve its goals through the provision of humanitarian aid and work promoting policy change. Through the open and mobile clinics, volunteer medical professionals provide services free of charge to people with limited or no access to health care, primarily migrants, refugees, Palestinians residents of the West Bank and Gaza. At the same time, PHRI works to change discriminatory and abusive structures and policies towards Palestinians in the occupied territories, prisoners and detainees, migrant workers, refugees, undocumented persons, and Israeli residents. Dr. Lina Qasim Hassan is the chairperson of PHRI's board of directors. She is a family medicine specialist with Khalid Health Services in Haifa and the Western Galilee, specializing in end-of-life care. In addition to regularly volunteering with PHRI's West Bank mobile clinic and medical delegations to Gaza, Lina volunteers with their prisoners and detainees department, accompanying Palestinian hunger strikers. She speaks with courage frequently about her belief that all victims of this war deserve medical treatment. Dr. Guy Shadev is PHRI's Executive Director and Research Fellow at the Minerva Center for Rule of Law Under Extreme Conditions. He is a medical and political anthropologist specializing in the intersection of medical professionalism, ethno-national politics, and bioethics in Israel and Palestine. He received his PhD from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 2018, and his publications appeared widely in various publications. Our moderator today is Dr. Anwar Mahajne. Anwar Mahajne is an Al-Fahim native, now living in Greater Boston. She's assistant professor of political science at Stonehill College. She specializes in international relations and comparative politics. Her research focuses on gender, religion, cybersecurity, digital politics, disinformation, and Middle Eastern politics. She also serves on the Academic Council of American Friends for Combatants for Peace. She is the co-editor of Critical Perspectives on Cybersecurity, which will be published with Oxford University Press in the spring of 2024, and her writing has been featured in multiple journals. You just Google up the name and you'll find them, and most recently a personal piece in the National. So with that being said, I will hand over the microphone to Dr. Mahajne, and we'll take it on from there.
Okay. Oh, I guess you guys are going to be able to hear me clearly. So my name is Anwar Mahajne, as you guys just heard. I think I'm very excited to meet both of you right now. Thank you everyone for being here. I know it's Easter for some people. It's at 4 p.m. on a Sunday. So I really appreciate you coming to hear about the work of these two amazing people. I want us to start out with kind of a question. I know we heard a little bit about Physicians for Human Rights, Israel. I really want to hear more about how you view the work of the organization and how your different experiences, personal experiences, you both are Israeli citizens, but you come from different backgrounds. How did that shape kind of your work, why you decided to join the organization? And I'm sure you're facing a lot of challenges right now during this time. A lot of relationships are being tested. I would really like to hear more about that. So whoever wants to start.
I think Lina is longer in the organization, so she can start.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. I'm honored to be here, and That's better? Okay. So, my name is Lina, and I'm a family physician. I studied in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I was born in Nazareth and raised in Nazareth, and at the age of 18, I moved to Jerusalem in, the most intense period in the history, I think, of Jerusalem in the years of 2000, 2002. It was the first intifada, second intifada, and it was, you could feel the tension in the air in every place in Jerusalem. And when I was, I was raised at home on values, on humanistic values and, respect and care for every human being without caring from which origin he comes. And when I started studying, I saw in the hospitals, in the clinical fields, starting to see like Palestinian children and patients coming to ask for medical care. And I saw also what was going on the ground with all the borders and the walls, and thought to myself, like, I'm in the hospital and I can see people who all the medical facilities are accessible to them, and some people can't get this because they are under occupation. And in one day, when I was in a pediatric department, a child from a village near Bethlehem was admitted there, and in the morning round, his mother came to the senior doctor, who was a Jewish senior doctor in Hadassah Har HaTzufim Hospital in Jerusalem, and she asked for a letter, in order to give it to the, in the checkpoint, so she can reach the hospital every day easily to be with, because they make it very difficult for her, the army. And she cried, and I just looked to me so normal that this mother should be with her child in the hospital when he is admitted with a very difficult disease. And the doctors say to her, you can go to call Physicians for Human Rights and ask for application. And I said, what is this, Physicians for Human Rights? I didn't know this. That was like 23 years ago. And he just told me, just go to the website and see it. And it was just the beginning of the internet. It was not, everywhere. And I just waited to go to the doctor's room in order to go to the computer and see what is this Physicians for Human Rights is about. And I was just thrilled with the words that I read. They were very simple, but very convincing, People under the control of somebody, some authority, they have to get the services, their rights, and the minimum is, the medical care and access to medical care. And this occupying authority is responsible for people's health and for taking care of their rights, their very basic rights. And I read and read and read, and I was, wow, this is where I belong. I decided to start, volunteering with Physicians for Human Rights in the beginning in the mobile clinic in the West Bank. Every Saturday, we have a mobile clinic that goes to one of the villages and gives medical care. A big delegation usually from, Israeli and Palestinian doctors, and nurses and multidisciplinary staff, and we contact with medical facilities inside the West Bank, and we organize like a medical day. They come hundreds of people to get medical care, medicine, and we find like special cases, that can't get that the treatment is not available in the West Bank for them, and we refer them to get medical care inside Israel, or we organize for them to get medical care in Jordan or in Egypt. And after that, I also volunteered in the detainees department. I saw also that the detainees do not have the medical access to the access to medical care, and then I started volunteering with hunger strikers, and our organization believes, I think it's very special in a form of that it believes that humanitarian aid alone is not enough. We go to the West Bank, we go to Gaza. I can speak about Gaza later, but we give humanitarian aid, medical care, but we think that our main role is to change, the policies that caused these violations of basic rights. So we have multiple activities that we can, maybe Guy can expand more about this.
Thank you, Lina.
I think
we need,
this is the best.
So yeah, I come from a very different background than Lina. I'm Jewish Israeli. I grew up in a Jewish Israeli community. I've never met a Palestinian person growing up. But then I think my kind of encounter with Physicians for Human Rights and why I thought this is a place where I want to be, where I want to take part in their activities and our activities now. In my PhD, I did my research with Palestinian physicians in Israeli hospitals. And I have to say that Lina is really an uncommon example of that, because one of the things that was so sad for me to see is that I interviewed dozens and dozens of physicians and did field work in 2 hospitals and talked to physicians, and what I noticed is that people never speak up, never say what they think, not to their colleagues, of course not to the directors, not to even the secretary or a nurse, because if they say something, then that can kind of danger their whole career and everything that they do afterwards. We see that especially these days since October 7, when physicians even post something on social media and they are at risk of losing their jobs. And that's why I can't even understand how Lina is the way she is, because she was always so brave. She was always speaking. She can speak on all media outlets in Hebrew, Arabic, English, everything, and she's not the common kind of Palestinian physician who justifiably thinks that it's too risky to talk, to speak up. And then it was clear to me that we need to find a way of voicing their concerns, voicing the things that they want to say, but they feel like they have no voice. And one of the ways I thought is very effective is Physicians for Human Rights as an organization that can speak as physicians, speak in the name of physicians, and as Lina say, speak about the political aspects of inequalities that we see on the ground. And I think that's another thing that's I consider very important to Physicians for Human Rights Israel, is that we are speaking in the name of universal values, of human rights, of equality, but we are very much local in the sense that this is an organization of Palestinians and Jewish Israelis that work together and are not kind of trying to hide that we have political goals, and the way to achieve the human rights goals that we want and the equality goes through political work. And that means working with communities, with Palestinian communities, with Jewish Israeli communities, a lot of work with the medical community, trying to kind of use the capital of doctors and their influence on society in order to change the reality for the better. Sorry, we're giving too long of an answer. You have too many questions.
That's okay. I think we're touching on a lot of other things that I wanted to ask you about. But just to clarify, when you said you interviewed Palestinian in hospitals, do you mean Palestinians 48, okay. I just remember, I know of a case of a doctor. He went to high school with me, Ahmad. He's Mahajni, yeah. Yeah, you did? Okay, so that's an interesting case because apparently he gave cupcakes to everyone on the floor, right? And one of no, he's not cousin, but I went to school with him, from high school, and he got it in. He was suspended and then reinstated, but he quit eventually, right, from the hospital.
The case of Ahmed Mahajni is an excellent example. Unfortunately, he was like, it was before October 7th. It was on March, I think 1 year before. And he is a resident in chest surgery in Hadassah. He was like he's a very talented resident, and he just held like a small party in the department because he passed the exams, and there was like some cookies there, and he just gave a cookie to all the patients in the admitted, and one of the patients was a 16-year-old Palestinian boy who was accused of stabbing in Jerusalem, stabbing someone, and you know, he was Ahmad then was accused of supporting terrorism because he gave these cookies to this, you know, and it was like, and he just the hospital didn't hear what he has to say. He just got a letter that you are invited to hearing committee or something like this, and then it went public, and we talked about this case. That was much before October 7th, you know, and since October 7th, we are experiencing a policy of silencing, and you know, the medical staffs, Palestinian medical staffs in Israel compose like how much, 40% or of the doctors are Palestinian in Israel, and the medical system in Israel really depends totally on the Palestinian staffs, and you know, it's they are experiencing silencing and an atmosphere that has only a place for one agenda, no place of sympathizing with what's going on in Gaza. We are asked to condemn again the October 7th, which we condemned it from the first day, you know, the attack of Hamas. Okay, it was difficult for everyone it's really very traumatic for every one of us, but you know, we are asked to do it. If we don't do it on daily basis, we are accused of supporting terrorism. This is a general atmosphere, unfortunately, and people lost their jobs just because of a post or a like or something. And we in Physicians for Human Rights see one of our roles is to represent these people and to talk about this policy of and what is it to be like a Palestinian doctor in the medical system right now, you know.
Did you want to add anything, or was it good? Okay. That was just one of the stories to show that even before October 7th, inequality is persistent, even though Palestinian doctors make a big chunk of the medical system, and they were, you know, called as heroes during COVID, but you know, that has limits apparently. And that brings me to that question. So there is inequality, of course, that exists within the healthcare system between Palestinians inside of Israel and also Jewish Israelis and the doctors. But I also wanted to talk about, so you kind of started touching on it, the occupation, the permit system, the checkpoints, right? And how that affects delivery of healthcare services, how that affected the healthcare system in the West Bank and Gaza, but also the separation between the three areas and how that is creating also problems in delivery. And again, we're not even touching, you know, the October 7th, post October 7th just yet, because I know the situation has been complicated for a long, long time, right? So I was wondering if you could touch on all of that. And I know you wrote an article, Medical Apartheid, so I think if you could expand on that, that would be great.
Right. So yeah, I think thank you so much for this, Anwar, because I think a lot of these discussions these days start at October 7, as if history started at October 7. But it's very important to understand that the context in which these events lie in. And in terms of health, as Anwar said, we're seeing a medical system, a healthcare system, in a Palestinian healthcare system that is de-developed and limited in any possible way. So, as Anwar said, the main issue about it is it's differentiated. It's distinct. There's limitations of movement of patients and professionals between these different areas. With, of course, the most extreme case is Gaza, that's under a blockade for 17 years, with patients, some of the treatments that are not available in Gaza, 40% of medications are not available in Gaza. I'm speaking only before October 7, of course. I can't even start understanding the lack of medical equipment that is current in Gaza. And so a patient, for example, cancer treatment is almost exclusively outside the Gaza Strip. So if someone needs to go through cancer treatment, they need to go to hospitals, Palestinian hospitals in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem. So in order to move from one Palestinian area to another Palestinian area, they need an Israeli permit. And as all of you know, cancer treatments, for example, is not just a one kind of visit to the doctor and then you go back home. So you need to apply again and again. Every treatment, every time you need to go to the hospital, you need to apply for a permit from the Israeli permit regime. And that causes, first of all, a lot of treatment schedules that are damaged, and people die waiting for permits, die while some of their appointments are cancelled. Kids who need to go out of the Gaza Strip for treatment get permit, but then their parents don't get permit, and sometimes not even another relative, and they need to go with a distant aunt or with a neighbor sometime. And then you see 4-year-old kids going through the most difficult thing you can imagine without even their parents next to them. And this is a reality that has been in place for years and years, and trying to get the world to be involved in that, trying to get people to care for the lives of Palestinians has been a challenge that Palestinians are definitely speaking about it for many years. Again, this also kind of reflects itself, of course, with health outcomes, with I think I read it to me, 7 times child mortality for Palestinians when you compare it to Jewish Israelis. I mean, it's just unbearable to think about that 10 years gap in life expectancy. So there is no way, if you analyze these whole different systems of Palestinians in the West Bank, Palestinians in Gaza, Palestinians in East Jerusalem, and Palestinian citizens of Israel, when you analyze these differences between people just based on their nationality, just based on their ethnicity, that's medical apartheid. That's how we understand these gaps and how this regime works in these different territories.
I want to add that, on the ground, in our mobile clinic that goes every week, since October 7th, we have doubled it twice a week in the West Bank. We are seeing this on the ground happening online. When an ambulance of delivery of a woman who wants to give birth, she can't reach. She lives 20 minutes in a village, 20 minutes from Nablus. Okay, she can't reach Nablus because the road is blocked, because the settlers, throw stones on the ambulance and block the road, and that's also under the eyes and the supervision of the Israeli army. And it takes them like 6 hours with roads through the mountains in order to reach Nablus, and that's a direct effect on people's health. And this, this context we're talking about, it started before October 7th, long before, and since this government, was in charge, the government of very extremist right-wing people, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, we are talking about escalating in this violence and in these movement limitations, and people's life, are affected directly. And as for Gaza, okay, what happened? We know the medical system in Gaza. For many years ago, we have organized like more than 100 medical delegations in last 14 years, and we have volunteers like 20 to 30 volunteers, mental health specialists, physicians, orthopedics, ophthalmic surgery specialists that go every 2 months, enter Gaza. That was before October 7th, and we give medical care, free medical care in refugee camps, and bring also medical equipment and medications. And we saw before October 7th that this medical system that has been 16 years under a very severe siege and 56 years under occupation, had suffered from severe shortage of everything: medication, medical equipment, medical personnel. The medical staffs are prevented from getting any training outside Gaza Strip. So, like, when I speak to my patients, I work in with a Jewish community, and we speak about things happening, about life. They tell me, why what Gaza was okay before. Everything was okay, They don't know even how people live in Gaza, When I worked there in the refugee camps much before October 7th, people there, came to see us not because they want medical care. They want money to eat because they have nothing to eat. They tell me what they have in the fridge. I ask these things, and they have nothing to eat. They are not all of the people of Gaza, but many of the people of the refugees that we are talking about, a context of poverty, of unemployment, of overcrowding, and electricity and water is not available all the times of the day, all the hours of the day. That was before October 7th, and nutritional insecurity for many children. And it's a big prison. People can't go out from Gaza. Israel controlled everything that gets in and out from Gaza. And, Israeli people don't even know how it looks like to be there. And that's the problem, And that's the context, actually, since until October 7th.
Okay, thank you guys very much. I'm sure we can add more to this, but we are limited with the time, and I want us to move on to October 7th happened, and you guys you find yourself in a position where you always have to declare that you're horrified by what happened on October 7th, but you also have to provide services. You're focused on the humanitarian element. Now, we also know the state failed at addressing the needs of the communities in the Gaza envelope, the communities who had to leave their homes and were affected by the attacks. So tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing with them before we move on to other stuff.
Okay. I will start with my experience, 3 days or 2 days after the horrible attack, we organized a mobile clinic for the evacuees of Kibbutz Be'eri in one of the hotels of Dead Sea. Much before the state entered and started to send its staffs, it was very interesting to see this. All the civil society organization, managed to, send volunteers and help these people, and the state came very, very late. I don't know what exactly happened, but it took time until things were settled. And I worked with these people, and it was very, very difficult to see to be there. I was supposed to be in Gaza in October 12th. There was a very big delegation scheduled for October 12th, and I take with me sometimes, extra medicines that I have and equipment, and I prepared this, and I ended up taking these to the evacuees of Kibbutz Be'eri, and it was interesting to see, I got into this hotel and the lobby looked like a refugee camp, so many aides from everywhere came, and you can see the fear of the people in the eyes of the people, they are like, they still don't even realize what they have been through. I went to the rooms, some rooms of disabled, elderly, that they told me that they have been 24 hours in the shelter room without food, without medications, and an old man that can't even, he walked until October 7th, and since then he can't walk because of this very difficult experience that he had. And our clinic was there like for 10 days, and when we realized that the state is settled and the services, the medical care is available for everyone, we closed the clinic, but we have so many insights from this experience. Our volunteers went there, they accompanied, the community of Kibbutz Be'eri, also in difficult situation, they have this daily, they called it telling bad news forum, the secretary of the kibbutz gathered the people in a very big hall and they informed them, they read the lists of the killed people who were recognized and people who were doubted to be hostages, and it was very difficult to be in that hall for everyone. And in this moment, I saw the secretary is saying the list, reading the lists of the names, and I say, you can see whole families demolished, and the father, the mother, and the children. And I say in my heart, that's, and I am there, and I also think of the people of Gaza. The bombs started at that time in Gaza, and I say how bad that those people don't have even names. They're buried under the ruins, and you can see that the pain is the same in this side and in this side. It's the human pain. You can't, divide it, or you can't. It's the same. The loss and the trauma is universal, and we have to do something to stop that.
So I want us to move on to the situation in Gaza right now. We know that out of the 36 hospitals, there's only a dozen that are operational, barely, right? We know that initially there was lack of fuel, now also supplies. We know now Al-Shifa and Al-Amal, there's a battle that is happening and they're being attacked. There's a siege also in Al-Shifa hospital. A lot of patients and medical staff are trapped in the hospital. We know the risk for starvation in the south and the center is high, and in the north it's already happening. The famine is already happening in certain areas. We know that with the beginning on October 7th, we had 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza who had to deliver in unsanitary conditions without anesthesia at times. Malnutrition, babies have died from starvation and malnutrition, lack of sanitary product, infectious diseases. And I could, go read the whole long list of these things. Amputees, children amputees. I think the death toll is over 32,000 at this point. So what do you think, what have you guys been trying to do to maybe help or pressure? I know we're talking about, affecting policy, because some solutions are band-aid solutions, right? Providing medicine, but not really taking care of the root causes of the problem. It's going to continue to happen and get exacerbated with every time. Like, we have an extremist government, but the root causes of the occupation, and it doesn't matter if it's Ben-Gvir or somebody else. The situation was was like this for decades. So what work are you guys doing? Or first of all, let me get your assessment about the situation in Gaza. I didn't even talk about attacks on ambulances and, medical staff. And then what kind of work are you trying to do considering what's happening right now?
Yeah, I don't think, Anwar gave some of the data, and I think most of us kind of follow the news and know the scale of devastation that is now in Gaza. For us, the first thing that we immediately called out for, and that's the most important thing, is just to stop the attack, stop the bombing. We can speak about humanitarian aid, we can speak about the protection of hospitals, and there is no safe place in Gaza, and there hasn't been a safe place in Gaza since October 7. Even though the Israeli military claimed some areas are supposed to be safe, we know that they are not safe. We have statistical information of where the bombs fell and their vicinity to hospitals, their vicinity to places that were supposed to be safe. So that's the first thing that we have done, and we've called for ceasefire basically from the first week of this attack. And we're doing a lot of advocacy, trying to pressure the international community, to pressure the Israeli government to call for ceasefire. And then there's the issue of the Gazan healthcare system, which is really just a tragedy to look at what we are seeing now and what has become in the past few months. And I'm not only talking about the tragedy of hospitals or the tragedy of the Gazan people who need this system in order to survive, but also it's a global scale tragedy in terms of the protection of healthcare facilities and protecting international humanitarian law. This is this attack on Gazan healthcare and Gazan health facilities is something that we, and not just us, but also specialists, say that we're going to pay for this in all different conflicts, in all different contexts, because this scale of violation and no accountability will have its effect everywhere. And we saw one of the first things we've done, I think it was October 22nd, 20 of the 36 hospitals in Gaza got an evacuation order from the military. So first of all, this is by itself illegal and a violation that has no basis. I mean, if a military has some information that a specific hospital is being used by Hamas or by a different military group, then there's a set of actions that the military needs to do in order to protect this facility and patients and staff. But you cannot kind of give this kind of entire system orders to evacuate. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you order a hospital or a facility to evacuate, you have to provide for a safe evacuation. You have to provide for a professional evacuation. You have ICU patients. You have prenatal kids, in incubators. You need ambulances, you need roads, you need professional staff in order to and you need somewhere to put them in. You need other hospitals to be able to accept them. Only then you can even consider evacuating a hospital. So it was like a Friday night, midnight, that we got a call from Al-Quds Hospital. The military just called me. The director called us and said, you have to evacuate the hospital right away or we'll bomb the hospital. So we immediately filed a petition in the High Court. It's kind of, it's formal name is the High Court of Justice, but I don't think you can even say this. It's just the High Court. And we demanded that these evacuation orders are illegal and should be stopped. Eventually, that night, Al-Quds was not evacuated, but in the coming weeks afterwards, Al-Quds and basically all other hospitals in the northern side of Gaza were attacked or evacuated. And then you're left, first of all, whatever we've done, we're always with this sense of we're just not doing enough, because you feel like you're you're just fighting against. I mean, there's no accountability, and the Israeli military and the Israeli government knows that there is no accountability. So even if we file petitions, even if we send letters, if we get international politicians and diplomats to say something, it has no effect on the ground. I can give you an example from the past 14 days where there's a siege on Shifa Hospital. So the military claims that there are militants in the hospital. So there's some things you're supposed to do in order to protect the patients and staff members, even if you have if you claim that this is justified in any way. But what they have done is they've taken all the patients and staff members, put them in one small facility, knife center, and then kicked out all the caregivers, so all the family members, everyone. So they're just left with patients and the medical professionals, and then haven't provided any water or food or medication for more than a week. So this has become kind of this. I don't know even how to describe the reality there, and among them people with very bad injuries, and among them 2 kids, Rafif and Rafiq, 15 and 16-year-old. They were there with their uncle. They were there because 3 weeks before their house was bombed and they lost their mother and 10 other family members, both amputees. They were there with their uncle. The military kicked their uncle out of the hospital, so they were left alone with no family member to protect them or to just stay with them. And then we tried with other international organizations, Human Rights Watch, Medical Aid for Palestinians, and with different diplomats to somehow get medical evacuation of these patients from Shifa, and including these 2 little, not little, but 2 children really alone there. And then I think this case shows a lot about how we kind of face this cruelty and just walls that we don't even find a way to find cracks in them. So we sent out a letter to the military kind of justice. Anyway, it's kind of the military legal kind of wing. And they checked with they checked with the forces on the ground, and they said that no, it's okay. We're giving them food and water and medications. We're taking care of those who need care, and that's kind of, you don't have to worry about them anymore. And then, I mean, we knew that we cannot trust them, of course, but we did get information from the hospital that they got some food and water and medication. And then one of the bigger brother, Rafiq, who had very bad injury, was indeed evacuated to what the military claimed is a medical tent that inside the Shifa hospital that they're caring for his wounds. I'm telling you this because it's also something that really affecting us today, because we got this message today that it was found out that he was not evacuated to the military tent, that they just took him and put him in another room. So all the other patients and medical staff thought that they took him and taking care of him, but he was just put in a room with water. We still need to verify all this information, but this is what the sister told her father, who talked to her from outside the hospital. And it feels like there is really no border or no limitations of the cruelty, and there's no pressure that we can apply in order to save these people's life. And sometimes we get little wins, or a week ago, the military decided they're sending back patients from Gaza that are hospitalized in hospitals in Israel and East Jerusalem. So we filed a petition, and we stopped that from happening. So there's kind of moments where we feel like, okay, these 20 people that were on the petition, but there were totally of 49 people, are saved for at least 30 days because the state said they're not going to deport them for 30 days. So if you ask what we do is kind of, we document, we try to intervene wherever we can in kind of, at the moment we think can help. but it's really never enough. It feels like it just need to stop. That's the only way to save people.
Yeah, from the first day of the war, we tried to gain medical care, medical equipment and medications for Gaza. And what happened is that the bank frozen our account, and we couldn't get our money, and because they knew it's supposed to go to Gaza, so we had our bank account frozen, and we are trying to get our money from our account, and that's like an example of how the Israeli authorities trying to even humanitarian aid not enable it. It calls it like supporting terrorism, and that's one of the things we try to do, but we can't. Another thing that is important, we feel, you asked about how we feel, we feel helpless. We feel very small in this endless needs, and we see all these crimes done on daily basis. And, we condemned October 7th, but I think it does not justify this scale of devastation that's going on right now on the ground. It's unprecedented not only in the Israeli-Palestinian history of conflict history, also in the world. What's happening right now, it's a complete collapse of the medical system of Gaza. You have to know that the medical system of Gaza depends 90% of it on the hospitals, because there is no primary medicine. That was not developing a primary medicine system was not possible because of the occupation and the siege all these years. So the hospitals are 90% of the medical services, and from day one, Israel, made a delegitimation campaign for the medical system in order to justify in front of the international law these attacks and these very severe violations of international law. And the claims of Israel about Hamas using the hospitals as military facilities, no international neutral authority came and examined these claims. We had a report that we published 2 months ago about medical system in Gaza, and there we explain why these claims do not justify this scale of attack, and one of the things I do in my work is teaching, and I teach in medical physicians that want to be family physicians, medical ethics, and I think sometimes I sit in the class and I don't understand, we are talking about, confidentiality and ethical dilemmas in doctor-patient relationship, and I say, the medical ethics is being, destroyed in every scale we can imagine. Right now, in every news, in the news every day, we see these violations of medical ethics, and the Israeli medical community is not exposed to this, because there is only one agenda in the Israeli media. The Israeli media does not show anything happening in Gaza, and the medical community is exposed, and the Palestinian medical community, they know and they see, but they can't speak up, as we said before. So I think that one of the roles we play in Physicians for Human Rights, also documenting and also exposing the Israeli society to the truth and to the horrible things done in Gaza. And this has a price, we have, sometimes our staffs get threats on their lives, and people saying very bad things on the media, on the social media, for the posts we share, and that's the atmosphere we've been through.
Don't worry, I'll give you some time for questions. But I think documentation and creating a memory and record of what's happening is very important and essential, as you say, because now I think some Israelis are now getting some of the videos that are happening in Gaza, but initially there was nothing. Nobody had the space to even look. And to say it's just the media is interesting because anybody could go on Instagram or go to Twitter and you have access to all these recordings and videos. Some people choose not to look at these things, but also the media has an obligation to show this. But recording and memorizing what's happening and kind of maybe it will help because part of the investigation with the ICJ is how do you record these stories and incidents? How do you record evidence? And also for what happens, because Gazans are not really able to do that except videos on Instagram every once in a while. But even that ability has been rendered at times not there because of the lack of Wi-Fi, the lack of internet, the lack of ability to communicate with the outside world, as we saw a few blackouts happening. So I think that's kind of an important thing to highlight. I do want to ask you, this is my last question before I open it up for questions. I think I want to give some time. So first of all, what do you think the U.S. and international community, what role should they play in helping this? I mean, the international medical community as well. And also, how can we here in the U.S. help you guys try to, as much as possible, help? And I actually just remembered that you also know people who got affected in Gaza, right? Family connections. I don't know if you want to talk about that before we go to that question.
Yeah, I can share I have my sister-in-law's brother, Marwan. He's an ambulance driver in Gaza. Her family is from Gaza originally. And I knew him through the delegations to Gaza. And in the first time I was there, he waited for me 3 hours until our medical day was over, and then he introduced himself and he took me for a ride all over Gaza. He took me to his home, and he can't see his sister and his mother, who is staying in Nazareth because of the block, they can't visit each other, and he never saw his mother for so many years, 20 years or something like this. And he built a small house for her in case she comes, that she will have some place to stay. And he showed me this, and we took photos, and I met his family, and it was really something very, very exciting for me. And he took me all around Gaza with his car and with his family. I saw the other side of Gaza because we are used to see the war and the destroying, and here I saw the daily life of people, that these beautiful beaches, and these children that just a little sun and they go into the beach because this is the only place they can breathe normally. And it was summer, and at night everyone goes out in the center of Gaza. And I saw in the eyes of the people, in spite of the poverty, in spite of the very bad situation that they have been living, they have this passion to live for life like any other nation in the world. They would just want to live and to develop and to work and to get education, like every one of us. This is very normal needs that the Palestinians have been denied for so many years. And after that, in the first day of October 7th, I heard my sister-in-law shouting, and turns out that Marwan was killed in the first bombing of Gaza in the same day of the beginning of the war, and he died. And I thought a lot about him and about his mother. 1 month later, got a very big stroke, and she's disabled right now, unfortunately. And his family's house, and this small house that he made for his mother was completely destroyed. And we saw the photos, we see these photos of Gaza. I see the photos of me and my friends, the volunteers that have been, eating in the restaurants and seeing the beach. And and see this, you know, I have this photo from the boat, you know, and Gaza is just in the background, and I see now, like, I try to get the same photo now, you know, and all this demolished, you know, and destroyed Gaza, the beautiful Gaza is a tragedy. And, you know, people say that it will take like 100 years to rebuild Gaza and to be able to live a normal life there. You know, it's impossible to continue living right now. So one of the things that the American people can do, you know, just to make pressure on the American regime to stop this war immediately, and to help, you know, rebuilding and giving the Palestinian people a chance for self-determination, because they need this. And I think this is the only thing that can stop this vicious circle of violence and this endless circle of violence in the area.
Yeah, we just have a chat before. We had a chat before this talk about how to pressure the American regime to change its actions and maybe put the pressure on Israel to stop it. It's not even putting the pressure on Israel. It's just they just need to stop sending arms. It's not even. It doesn't. It's not even very complicated. But I feel I don't want this kind of event to be an event of kind of, pessimism, and because we also in these very kind of dire times, we find ways to act, to find ways to try to save one more life, to try to do something, and maybe it's not really from our position to kind of. I mean, it's very hard for us to imagine what we can do, so it makes it even harder for me to tell you what you can do. But I trust that you know better your society, your political system, the people that you can talk to, the people that you can influence than us. And just coming here today is, I think, for us, it's very inspiring that you. And I know that all of you already know what happens, but you still want to come here and still think together, maybe as a community, to do something. It feels like sometimes these kind of bubbles of kind of awareness that you need to to pop them. And I can tell you that in my family, I mean, my whole family kind of supports this war, like 9% of Jewish Israelis. And I feel like every kind of Shabbat dinner, every time I try to poke into the kind of know a little bit of what it means that you support it, what happens on the other side of the bombs that you say that are kind of justified. And I think I can't say that I'm too successful. I think that, but it's also kind of maybe the only thing we can do, just keep poking. And I know that it's absurd, because we know that in Israel, a lot of people just are exposed to Hebrew media, Hebrew-speaking media, and we know that there's this whole kind of structure is very kind of built to keep Israelis in this idea that they're the victims and whatever is happening is justified. And I know it's not, you can't blame the media, because social media is really supposed to allow information to seep in, even if you don't want that. But also here in the US, I'm sure, and I know you know from your communities, from your families, people don't want to see, people don't want to know. And we just need to, I don't know, keep pushing.
Thank you, guys. Should we open it up for questions? Do we have one mic over there? Okay. Okay. Anybody has a, do you guys have a question? We can hear you. You can come, yeah.
I just wanted to ask Lena about the condition in the prisons right now, if you could update.
Conditions
Just the
in the prison.
regular prison, so I know there's also different, for the people from Gaza, but also for people that have been picked up, especially since in the West Bank, the conditions have changed severely.
Okay, thank you for the question. It's very important. You know, there's so much to say about the prisons, the prisoners and the detainees right now. You know, before October 7th, there was like few thousands of political prisoners, Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli jails, and they had through a very bad conditions. And that was before October 7th. Ben Gvir had this, you know, strategy to worsen, you know, their situation. And since October 7th, there were also thousands of prisoners from the attack and from the Israeli attack also that are, you know, arresting people, including medical personnel. And yes, and also the third community of prisoners is the people who worked with authorization inside Israel, Gazan people that worked and they get stuck in the war inside Israel, and automatically their authorization work permits were cancelled automatically, and they were arrested. So they were sent to some camps that nobody knows anything about them, and some of them were, and the Israeli forces, you know, refused to give any information about them and any to enable any visits of lawyers and they, and then a few months later they were part of them, like 3,200 were released back to Gaza, and for the Palestinian detainees that have been arrested since the October 7th from Gaza, you know, they are held in very bad situations in military camps in the desert that nobody knows anything about them, and we're talking about situation that is, there is no other word to describe this other than torture. It's really very, very difficult. You know, they are held in the cold weather without any clothes. They are tied for 20 hours a day, and you know, they are not given enough food, 1-2 minutes for shower, and you know, very, very difficult situation, and that's what's going on. If you want to add something.
Yeah, so first of all, we had a report that we published about prisoners, Palestinian prisoners since October 7. We can send it out. Also, it's on our website. And one of the things we talked about documenting, so we are sending our volunteers to autopsies of prisoners who died since October 7. So we have 12 prisoners who died in the Israeli prison service, and 27 who died in that incarceration camp. It's called Sde Iman. It's basically the Israeli Guantanamo. Just as a comparison, in the entire time that Guantanamo was operative, 9 people died there. We have 27 people who died there in just 5 months in the Israeli Guantanamo. There's a clinic there that we know that is operating and violating every medical ethic that we might even consider. And we have another report coming out in 2 weeks from now, and that's about the violation of medical ethics in whatever concerns these people that were arrested from Gaza. And it's important to understand that some of these people were arrested. All of them are defined as illegal combatants, which is the American invention, kind of gift to the world. For example, one of them was an 82-year-old Alzheimer patient, a woman. She was defined as an illegal combatant. She was held for 2 months. We were trying to get her out. And there are underage people, children also there. So, and then we think that when we, for example, when we send a volunteer to take part in the autopsy, then we have this information that we can take it out and show. And I think part of the reason why in the Security Council latest decision, they mentioned specifically detained people in all parts, is it's already known that this is what's happening. So people in the world know that, and we're trying to change that. I can hear you. You can say it. Turn the microphone.
My children to kill Palestinians, and I didn't want the Palestinians to kill them. Being a historian by profession, I knew that when you conquer a nation, you become an ugly group of people, an ugly nation. Unfortunately, it's my nation who became so ugly. The stories that you told us, my dear, with your voice, I know it's happening, but it has cut my soul into 1,000 pieces that I have to go home now and I have to glue it together. Because it's harder to be a child of the perpetrator than a child of a sufferer. And I said that as a child of the Holocaust. When they asked me when I was young, what would you rather be, a German youth or a Jewish youth? I said, I still want to be Jewish. I don't want to be that. And now, my nation, who partly became fascist, hating, immoral, a Jewish, a Palestinian mother, I hear many say, she doesn't cry after her child. Why? Because she's Palestinian. Only Jewish mother cries. So I know what you say about Fridays. Too many Israelis believe in that. And one thing, because I am so sensitive to what's going on, I keep, like a masochist, I go back to the news to hear it again as if I don't know it. First, I think it was 3 or 4 days after the war, either the Ramatkal or Sar HaBitachon came and I heard that sentence out of his mouth. We went for a war of vengeance. He used the word vengeance, and he kept it. They kept it. It is a war of vengeance, as if they are better. Some Jews in America wouldn't like to hear me saying that, as if they are better than Hamas. Hamas is vengeance. One thing that the Palestinians have to do is to separate the word Palestinian and Hamas. Many people in foreign countries don't know the difference, and there is a big difference. But it's not put enough in your media. Don't judge the Palestinians. Judge the Hamas, which is a militant group. And a few months ago, in one of those camps, 2 Palestinian boys, 14 and 16, went up, because they were that age, and they wanted to put the Palestinian flag, and all the jailers there beat them up, got them naked, and stole everything that those children had. Hallelujah for the Jews, right? I cry for that. Now, my generation failed to bring peace, failed to bring justice. I'm giving the baton to you. May you have a better luck in doing that. whatever.
Thank you.
So my question concerns the, so I know a lot of the death toll in Gaza is reported by the Gaza Ministry of Health, or as it seems to be called in our media now, the Hamas Ministry of Health. And my question is actually, what level of ability is there still to like report death accurately in this kind of situation? Like, what level of tracking is still manageable in the current state?
Right. So, first, the Ministry of Health in Gaza is indeed under the political control of Hamas, but it has been very accurate in that kind of reporting throughout the past 16, 17 years. We know that from past rounds, when during the fighting, the Israeli military numbers were much lower than those of the Ministry of Health, and then when the fighting ended, they found themselves around the same number, and that's the number that the Ministry of Health was reporting the whole time. And the reason why the Ministry of Health is so accurate is because they're not reporting a death before they have a name and a number, and then they count the dead. They don't, and you know, you see the numbers in the media, they always say these and that people died, and then we have an estimated number of people who are just missing, and they are under the ruins, right? But Hamas, even though they know, the Ministry of Health, even though they know the names of some of these people under the ruins, they don't count them as dead until they have verification that they are dead. There are other information that the Ministry of Health and Hamas is given is not accurate. We know that their reporting of specific events is not accurate. So because they cannot know how many people died in a specific bombing, they don't have the ability to collect that data. They collect the data from the hospitals who died today, and then they add it to the number. If they don't know if those people died in that event or the other event. So we need to make sure what kind of information we kind of trust, and all international organizations, the UN, WHO, OCHA, all are following the Ministry of Health numbers. So these are the numbers. Definitely, the numbers are definitely higher. First of all, because of people who are missing. Second of all, because we know that even if the war ends today, still a lot of people are going to keep dying because of starvation, because of diseases, and so the numbers are going to keep climbing even if we have a ceasefire today. But we know that now there are, for example, it's even tragic just to realize that this is something that's happening. Now there's a link that a Gazan can enter, press the link, it's spread, the Ministry of Health sent it over Telegram, so people can enter this link on Telegram and add the name of the missing person that they know is missing and probably is under the ruins. So they're trying to collect these numbers, but even thinking of like needing this kind of a system is so tragic.
I just want to add about the numbers of people that the medical system in Gaza is under complete collapse, as I said before, and there are special populations that are especially vulnerable, and the damage is very big to them. You know, there are 2 million in Gaza, and there are chronic patients like every other population, cancer patients, dialysis patients. We think of the people are in Gaza, instead of 4 hours sessions of dialysis, they lower it to 2 hours, and this has a direct effect, and there are many people died because there's no fuel, no electricity, and the medical system is unable to give this care to the chronically ill patients who are dying not because of injury or because they don't have medications, they don't have, so they die, and this is supposed to add to the numbers of dead people, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Sounds okay, right? Oh, you just want to make sure. So I actually had 2 questions, but just in the interest of time, so I don't take anyone out, I figured I'd go with the one I thought about a bit later. So I know we've talked a bit about, since I know the previous question was regarding the Gaza Health Ministry, I know the United Nations Relief and Work Agency has been under a lot of scrutiny lately, in part due to their historical practices and their current operating procedures, but also in part because of the allegations from Israeli authorities that the agency was complicit in October 7th, and then the counter allegations that those allegations had been informed through torture and other human rights violations. And I was just wondering, since there's all this talk about UNRWA, are there any serious legitimate criticisms of the way UNRWA runs? Are there things that UNRWA does well but could do better? How does that play? Because obviously the agency definitely, I assume, plays a very key role in supporting the healthcare system in Gaza.
So the first thing and most important thing to understand is this is the only system that can help in making humanitarian aid accessible to the population. So, of course, there are things that they can do better. Of course, there are things that some of their members have done wrong. But still, if you think about providing food and water to the people that are not going to die, you need UNRWA. You cannot disregard them or defund them. Definitely not now. Regarding the accusations that they were complicit in the October 7 attacks, UNRWA has tens of thousands of employees. It's as if, I don't know, an employee of the Boston municipality commits murder, and you say the Boston municipality is complicit in murder, right? If a number of people from UNRWA were complicit in October 7, it doesn't supposed to say anything about this huge humanitarian system that they are employed in. And we saw that this attack on UNRWA has, you can say two things about it. One is that it started in much greater scale after the ICJ ruling. So the ICJ ruling in January 26 demanded that Israel performs better or enables humanitarian aid, right? And then they started attacking UNRWA. So it's too, I mean, you cannot do what you were told by the courts and still act to defund UNRWA, and it was very effective in terms of 18 different countries announced that they are not going to support them. Since then, some of them took it back. The other thing is, I don't remember. Oh, right, that this is also, and it seems like this is a moment when Israel is trying to use its years-long kind of case against UNRWA and try to kind of close this very important branch of the UN, because they would argue that the UNRWA is what is keeping the Palestinian refugee argument alive, right? And so this needs to be also put in kind of historical context and see that UNRWA has a role. It has a lot of kind of disadvantages, and Palestinians are the first to say that there are very bad things about how UNRWA operates. But still, it has a very important role, and we should not allow this kind of moment to be used in order to close it.
So yeah, the historical context is important. UNRWA has been under attack for a long time, but it also, because it keeps the refugee question alive, they serve Palestinian communities in Lebanon and Syria and other camps outside of Gaza. And also we know that Israel has failed to deliver aid even in the north, where there is a claim that Israel has control over it. And we know the flour massacre, where a lot of people died, 100 people died trying to get flour. So apparently there is a failure of even delivering service in areas that Israel has control over in the north of Gaza. So who else is going to deliver that? That's an important question as well. Thank you.
Can you hear me? So my question is just about recent news of protests in Jerusalem for early elections. And with us hearing so many stories about statistics about the support of Israelis towards the war effort, I'm wondering how you square this. Is that they just don't want Netanyahu, they want a different government, but they want to keep the same policy? Do you think there's any hope of a new policy coming with a new government? If you could sort of flesh that out as it relates to health and human rights.
I think we were talking about the hostages.
And also, is there awareness in Israel of the prisoner situation for Palestinians inside of Israel, or is it sort of a, as it relates to that as well, or is it kind of just...
This is an easier question, so I'll answer that first. No. And also, any kind of attempt to address that is like you're trying to protect Hamas militants. You're supporting terrorists, because for them, everyone that's in prison probably is a terrorist. So any kind of argument for their rights is considered supporting terror. And the whole idea of resisting this war is kind of... So for a long time, there were no demonstrations, right? And no one went to the streets. And when very mildly political kind of gatherings that were supposed to resist the war, they were forbidden by the police. Any kind of event that was supposed to be like Jews and Palestinians together in some sort of a hall or convention center was immediately determined illegal and then was forbidden. So the only kind of critical, the only way to be critical about this war was through this lens of the hostages. That was kind of the something that was deemed legitimate, of course. But also then you could see that also the family forum of the hostages and families who were speaking out loud to support their family members were also kind of delegitimized, and there's a lot of attack from the right wing on families of hostages. This is really sad, of course. But we see in the past few weeks that there are more demonstrations, more people going to the streets, and demonstrations getting bigger. And some of them, it's kind of a bigger group that have smaller groups that argue, yeah, we need to stop this war. But I can say, for example, it's the second time I'm talking about my personal family. Sorry, for example, my parents go to these demonstrations because they think that the way that this is being played out is not the way that it should be because of Netanyahu, and that the hostages needs to be a priority in these decisions. But they don't kind of question the whole idea of attacking Gaza or the war. So it has kind of the spectrum of people that participate in this demonstration, and when you look at the political system, you see that in this current government, I mean, after the war started and other parties joined, it's representing. I'm not sure how many mandates are now like part of this government. I think more than 80. That's for sure. So it's representing more than 2/3 of the parliament that are in the government. So it's not a question of Netanyahu yes or Netanyahu not. Also, their kind of opponents are part of this government, part of the war cabinet. Yeah.
For people who are living in Israel, they can see the general atmosphere. There is a consensus in this war. No one says stop the war. It's not because of the people of Gaza. Even if they say this, I will say it in other words. What guys said even if they demand stopping the war, it's only because they want the hostages to be back, and this is a legitimate demand, of course, but no one is seeing the suffering of the people of Gaza as a reason to stop the war.
And I think people also realize that the majority of hostages who were released through negotiations. And there was the 3 hostages that were killed by the IDF, and then they know that the only way probably to keep them alive is through that, and the starvation is going to affect the hostages. The lack of medical care is going to affect the hostages, and I think a lot of the families feel that they're left out. Was it Ben-Gvir who said we should focus, we shouldn't talk about the hostages, should focus on what's happening, or finishing Hamas? So, yeah.
I think I already know the answer to this, and you probably already answered it, but I think hearing you today, what's so powerful is giving faces and telling stories that counter the dehumanization that comes in this situation, and countering the, what I would call like the paranoid projection, whereby you turn people you fear, you turn a monolith that you fear into monsters when they're just people.
Animals.
What?
Animals.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah. And your stories help dissolve that. And so what I'm wondering about, is there any room to affect more of a peace movement among the medical community in Israel? Is that a place where you might develop a stronger peace movement and countering the dehumanization, or is it? Anyway, I'm just curious about what the general medical community in Israel is like.
I just remembered, didn't a few doctors sign the document?
Yeah, that's unfortunately also. No, okay, I can.
What Guy often says, I hear him say multiple times, the Israeli medical community is a community that also wants to be connected with their counterparts in the world. And they have to understand that in order to be accepted in that community of medical caregivers, the people who care for others, there are standards and there are expectations of what they should, how they should behave and act. And that's also power of these different societies, organizations, and their ability to influence, sort of work both outside in and inside out on creating that atmosphere of what's right and what's wrong. So I saw Guy left, and he often talks about that.
I want just to say something about the atmosphere in the medical community. We talked about it before, but unfortunately, the medical community is enlisted totally to this war project, and there was this letter that was signed by more than 100 Israeli doctors at the beginning of the war, calling for the Israeli forces to bomb Shifa hospital and other hospitals. You know, we have this oath, to save lives and to relieve pain, and we are not military consultants. Why should doctors call for bombing another hospital in any place in the world? And they write there in this letter that these people, children or women, there are thousands of people taking shelters of the hospitals, who were forced to leave the north of Gaza, taking shelters, that were killed in these bombs. And these doctors justified this, and they said these people are in war, people are killed, and it's okay for children to be killed because the Hamas is using the hospitals as military facilities. And one of the doctors that have signed this letter is my direct boss. And I cried when I saw this, because I work with this man. I meet him every day, and he is in charge for more than 100 Palestinian doctors, who come every day to work. And how would they feel, that he's a mentor, he's a teacher, he's a role model? How can these people learn? What message do you give your people that you are teaching and you are mentoring? And that's the medical community in Israel. There was a question about what is the role of the medical community in the struggle for peace and justice. So if you want to add something.
Yeah, so I'll just add, first of all, that we see kind of a deterioration in kind of the idea of medical ethics across the board. So it's about the attack on Gaza, it's about prisons, and we know that that's kind of also what we may hope that can change, because we know that doctors are kind of susceptible to also international pressure because they're part of a global community. They go to conferences. You said that? Okay. Oh, okay. 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 So I should continue. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, it was a very long day. We just landed today, this morning. Right, and so, and it's just not just doctors, but also academics. And for example, you've seen Israeli universities. My friend was suspended 3 days ago, Regev Nathanson, from a college in the south. And Nadira Shalhoub Kavorkian, a professor in the Hebrew University, was suspended also from teaching. She just was reinstated. And we need to think also about that question about what you can do here from the US or from other places. Where are these kind of pressure points that you can influence on? And academia is one of them. Medicine and doctors are the other one. So use these kind of pressure points.
Thank you very much for your work. Much appreciated. I have two questions. One of them maybe quick. Would you talk about the disparities between the Israeli Jewish and the Palestinian Jewish citizens of Israel health services system inside? And another one, we know for years how the Israeli security apparatus uses people to get information and blackmail them to become collaborators. And have you received any reports or do you know of cases where people who needed medical treatment were pressured to get, in order to get a permit for themselves or their family, they would have to exchange that for information and actually become collaborators, even before October 7th.
So regarding the second question, yes, we have. The second question was whether Israel is using, or if we have information or data about Israel using medical permits to extort people and to for information. And we know that is true. We have this information. We have published it in previous reports, and we know that the whole permit regime is something that is very kind of opens a lot of ways for Israel to pressure the Palestinian community, the Palestinian society. And we know that as bad the conditions are for Palestinians, then it's easier to extort, it's easier to put pressure, it's easier to select specific weak individuals and exert more pressure on them. In terms of inequalities within Israeli society, maybe Lina wanted to.
The medical system in Israel is, there are so many very big gaps. That's also something we are dealing with in Physicians for Human Rights. There are very big gaps between the health of the Palestinian population and the Jewish population inside Israel. And that's like a policy of so many years of the Israeli authorities, because of that has so many reasons, and it's a policy, because there is discriminations in so many levels, and there is the health determining social health determinants of health. Social determinants of health that are lacking in the Palestinian community in Israel. I can give very very simple examples for that. There are no governmental hospitals inside the Palestinian communities. Nazareth is 80,000 people and no hospital to give any medical care for the people in Nazareth and the area around. There is no medical school, no university in any of the Palestinian, Israeli-Palestinian communities, and no medical school. But in Ariel, it's a settlement inside the West Bank. There is a medical school there. And
Do you know, like, people in the south, in the Bedouin community, unrecognized villages and the services? I don't know if you can talk to it.
Yeah, that's an extreme case of different inequalities. There's 5 years gap in life expectancy between Palestinian citizens and Israeli Jewish Israeli citizens. We're now having a project studying the in family medicine, for example. You would see that in Palestinian communities there would be one family doctor for maybe more than 2,000 patients, where the standard in Israeli communities, Jewish Israeli communities, is how many patients you have in an Israeli community?
The ideal is 1,000. It's one doctor to 1,000 patients. That's the OECD standard, actually, and we're seeking to get this also in the Palestinian community inside Israel. But there are so many reasons why, no,
yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, the fact is that, it's too complicated to look at the whole reasons, but the fact is that you see less doctors who have more patients, less facilities, less infrastructure in terms of sewage, water, parks that people can...
less socioeconomical status, that is less, more poverty, more unemployment, and less budgets that are reaching the municipalities, the Palestinian municipalities, and they can't develop, green spaces and public places, and I think these are some of the reasons. Mental health, the Palestinian people inside Israel are under so much stress and fear and economic insecurity, and that's one of the most important health determinants. And there is this social phenomena right now, the violence. People there, the organized violence. People are shooted and killed because of the organized crime, very developed in the Palestinian inside Israel. And that's another problem that we can talk about, very painful problem.
Thank you. And then we have the last question, right?
I have two questions. That'll pick one. Well, one of my questions was about some stories I've read about of what I would consider questionable medical ethics happening in the past in the Israeli policy of kidnapping Yemeni Jewish newborns, forced sterilization of Ethiopian women, and I was wondering if you could comment a bit more about your concept of medical apartheid, both in terms of just health outcomes, but also specific policies that you might see. I remember hearing something about segregated maternity wards or something like that. And then my second question, you don't have to get too into it if you don't want to, but it's about people's rights after death and the desecration of bodies and the holding of bodies by the authorities.
Actually, inside the medical system in Israel, there is a policy of segregation, very clear, and we could see that on a few years ago. We had this report about racism in the Israeli medical system, and one of the cases we dealt is the segregation between on maternity wards between Arab women and Jewish women. That was after the Smotrich star. He said in one of his he published like a post that I don't want my wife to be in the same room with a Palestinian woman after she gives birth, because I don't want Kulthum parties inside the room. And it had a very big echo in the Israeli media, and then people starting to ask. And I started my specialization in the delivery room in Sha'arei Tzedek in gynecology before I transferred to another field, and I saw this in my eyes. Yeah, Palestinian women are held in different rooms than Jewish women, and they call it like it's cultural adaptation or something like this. They have this name, but you know, you can't separate and be equal. Equality doesn't come along with separation. So we wrote about this. We went to the Knesset and we talked about this a lot. And this is, you know, a continuation of the discrimination policy of the Israeli authorities in the medical system. One of the another instance is another example is you know, when Ethiopian women came to Israel, Ethiopian Jewish came on 1981. There was this very big. They immigrated to Israel, and they were held in the desert for a few time before they came, and the Israeli authorities gave them like shots. They told them it's immunization. They just lied to them, and it turned out to be progesterone. It's you know, Depo-Provera is progesterone. It's you know, birth control injections. And women came to Israel and they didn't understand why they can't get pregnant, you know. And it's a very good example that of the racism that is part of the Israeli policy.
Just saying that, yeah, exactly that report, all these different cases you mentioned are in the same report, so you can go and read about that. But it's also important to say, it's not only about like pointing out and saying this is where they're racist, this is where they're doing wrong. So we see ourselves as part of this community, physicians for human rights. We're part of the medical community in Israel, Palestine. Maybe some of them don't want us to consider us part of that community, but we are part of the society in Israel, Palestine. We're part of the medical community, and part of our work we see as pointing out to the places where we can do better, where ethics is violated, where there's racism, and this needs to be corrected, and responsibly needs to be taken. So I think in these moments that it feels like people's ears are really shut and we cannot get to them, it's still important for us to kind of still acknowledge that we are doing this work out of love, and we believe in people's ability to listen, and we believe in people's ability to change, and to realize that maybe they've done something wrong, or maybe they supported something they should have not supported, and keep these kind of channels somehow open for discussion and the taking of responsibility.
Thank you, guys. That was great. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming and asking the questions and getting engaged. I actually have one good story to tell before leaving. My sister works at Hadassah, and she's a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner. I asked her what's going on in the hospital after October 7th, and she said one of the responsible nurse, the top nurse, she yelled at she scolded a nurse who said, "I don't trust Arabs." So she brought her into the office, scolded her, and she stopped that from happening. So there are hopeful stories as well in the system. That's why I want to emphasize your point. Yeah. When we have to push and encourage them more. So thank you, guys. Thank you for spending your Sunday with us.
Sorry, just I wanted to say that we talked a bit about all these reports and information we're getting out. So if you want to stay updated and see what we are publishing, and so you can register. There's flyers with a QR code that you can scan, and also you can register with Lee, or there's a signing sheet on the table there. and then we just add you to the newsletter list, and we don't send too much, really. But it's, yeah.